Disclaimer, I am not an expert on these subjects I discuss in these videos. I only share information that I've personally done my research on, or relaying an expert's message. My goal or intention with these videos is to cultivate understanding, awareness, and acknowledge real-life issues that we as humans face. I do hold certain opinions about these subjects, and so bias can play a role in the way information is shared. I would also like to acknowledge that the way we perceive the world individually can be vastly different from one another, and that's good. However, it's also good to look at things from another perspective when learning about reality, otherwise our biased views can become harmful.
Question. Why do older generations use the argument that younger generations are too sensitive, or something along those lines? Or another way of putting it, why do older adults minimize young people's feelings and traumas?
Question everything, question everything, question everything, question everything. Why?
The answer? Younger generations are holding them accountable for being misogynistic, racist, and in general problematic and inconsiderate douchebags. Now, I hear you getting upset about this. That is valid. Nobody wants to be called a douchebag. But that is exactly my point. Because boomers went through horrible things that they should not have had to endure. They, for some reason, let's blame it on the patriarchy for now, didn't feel able to open up or say anything about it, which resulted in internalizing all of those feelings and emotions and thoughts. And as you can imagine, it is incredibly emotionally exhausting and destructive. This is known as normalizing trauma. But you see, millennials and Gen Z have access to and are hyper-aware of information on mental health. This gives them a unique perspective and position to be in. Not only do they understand that the older generations have been hurting and didn't have the same tools that we do now, but they understand how their elders' anger and lashing out is affecting their own lives and future. So we call it out when we see it, and older generations tend to get angry because they're being held accountable for their actions, which they're not used to. This to them is a direct attack on their ego, and they'll counter it with gaslighting and minimizing. This is because they feel bad about what they've done, but wish to see themselves as a good person. However, people who feel good about themselves never have to demean others to make themselves feel more powerful. So they're like, why are you so sensitive? If I had to suffer through this, then you do too. Which loosely translates to, I wasn't allowed to feel and express my emotions when I was younger, and because you have the space to do it, it opens up that childhood wound in me, and you're hurting me by doing this, so please stop. They don't wish to face the source of their hurt, so they bring others down and hurt them instead. Can you not see how selfish that is? Imagine telling a crying child, oh, are you sad? Well, good, because you deserve it. We've all been sad before. Hold the phone! That is not the way to handle that. That only perpetuates the cycle of generational trauma and abuse. The correct way of handling that would be as follows. Hey, honey, are you alright? No? Well, I can listen if you want to talk about it. If not, I'm here to support you. You're not in trouble, and I just want to be able to communicate when needed, and for you to be happy and safe. So you create a safe space to talk openly, without judgment or ridicule, empathize and listen, and treat them with respect, because they're a separate human being. This might come as a shock to a lot of the old generations, but your kids were never an extension of yourself and have always been their own human being with complex thoughts and emotions. The moment they gain self-awareness and question everything, is the moment that a lot of parents stop liking their kids because they realize they can't shape them into their ideal mold. In fact, the more you try to squeeze them in, the more they'll want to find a space where they can be themselves and are accepted. It's basic human decency. Being respectful to others means that even if you don't agree with them, you accept them for who they are. If you're inconsiderate and abuse people, no one will want to be around you. There are several reasons people can't just leave an abusive relationship, and there's a lot of reasons why. But the first one is that those abusive behaviors have been normalized by society, so it might not even be recognized as abuse. This is why we need to break the cycle, people.
It's time for a mindful moment. We can take a moment to check in with ourselves.
So a few months ago, it was brought to my attention that I am really triggering to my parents because they never healed from the traumas that hurt them. And I'm very loud about healing from my trauma that hurt me. I am very loud about the boundaries that I have established due to those traumatic events that happened to me. And it was brought to my attention that I am a trigger for my parents because they never got the affirmation and validation that I am seeking for myself now. So recently I posted a TikTok that was talking about how Trump supporters allow him to get away with what he gets away with because they have had to normalize that shit in their own lives. So like tonight I was thinking about how they like to say that whole like, ooh, triggered thing, find your safe space. When ultimately we are triggering them because they cannot find the space to heal themselves. Like, it's so telling to me that there are women on this app who are like, you wouldn't let Trump grab you by the pussy? Like, come on, he's Trump. Listen, we understand that you were traumatized and you've had to normalize that trauma in your life and that you refuse to go to therapy to get help. But we don't have to normalize the trauma in our lives so that we accept it for, you know, just acceptance, and we don't try and fix it on any accord. And I just find that correlation so important in dealing with society right now. The Republicans, the conservatives, all of them are fighting tooth and nail right now because they know that their time is coming to an end. They know that there are only so many more election cycles before they are non-existent anymore, because millennials and Gen Z, we're healing ourselves. We're taking back our power. And that's what they thrive on, is taking away power and fear-mongering people into normalizing trauma.
Can someone's political identity actually affect their ability to process information? The answer lies in a cognitive phenomenon that has become increasingly visible in public life: partisanship. While it's often invoked in the context of politics, partisanship is more broadly defined as a strong preference or bias towards any particular group or idea. Our political, ethnic, religious, and national identities are all different forms of partisanship. Of course, identifying with social groups is an essential and healthy part of human life. Our sense of self is defined not only by who we are as individuals, but also by the groups we belong to. As a result, we're strongly motivated to defend our group identities, protecting both our sense of self and our social communities. But this becomes a problem when the group's beliefs are at odds with reality. Imagine watching your favorite sports team commit a serious foul. You know that's against the rules, but your fellow fans think it's totally acceptable. The tension between these two incompatible thoughts is called cognitive dissonance, and most people are driven to resolve this uncomfortable state of limbo. You might start to blame the referee, complain that the other team started it, or even convince yourself there was no foul in the first place. In a case like this, people are often more motivated to maintain a positive relationship with their group than perceive the world accurately. This behavior is especially dangerous in politics. On an individual scale, allegiance to a party allows people to create a political identity and support policies they agree with. But partisan-based cognitive dissonance can lead people to reject evidence that's inconsistent with the party line or discredits party leaders. And when entire groups of people revise the facts in service of partisan beliefs, it can lead to policies that aren't grounded in truth or reason.
The lack of parents respecting their kids' identities and sense of self can lead to cognitive dissonance. If you say that you love your child unconditionally but ignore or invalidate their identity, that right there is cognitive dissonance. Your actions show that you love them conditionally, which is what makes you feel bad about it, because that's a shitty thing to do. You should always love your children unconditionally and strive for understanding and connection with them. The definition of cognitive dissonance is basically mental discomfort when a person holds two conflicting thoughts, beliefs, attitudes, or values. An example of this would be smoking, the action, knowing it can cause cancer, cognition, and feeling guilty about smoking, dissonance. That dissonance is what a lot of people don't like about cognitive dissonance. So you can either change your belief, like the research is inconclusive, and continue to smoke, or you can change your actions and no longer smoke, knowing that it can harm you and others around you. Cognitive dissonance isn't necessarily a bad thing. In fact, it can prompt you to make positive changes when you realize your beliefs and actions are at odds. It can be problematic if it leads you to justify or rationalize behaviors that could be harmful. Change is difficult and uncomfortable, but necessary if we want to improve our lives and the future as a whole. If you hate yourself and bring others down, so they spread hate, that's not going to get us to the place we want to be. So start by practicing self-love and compassion towards other people. It's the first and most important step to creating positive changes. You might believe you're unworthy of love if you don't first love yourself, when in actuality, everyone deserves love regardless of their own relationship with themselves. Personal delusions versus personal beliefs are such a huge problem when tackling major arguments and issues. Personal beliefs are backed up by something in reality, and delusions, well, are made up entirely. And an example of this is believing in white supremacy, for instance, that everyone else shouldn't exist or are inherently inferior in some way. This is simply not true, and a delusion that is perpetuated by systemic racism and a little inferiority complex. Reality proves that everyone is a human being, no more or less important than another. Believing that masks and vaccines don't do anything when science has proven that they make a significant difference would also be considered a personal delusion based on conspiracy theories instead of scientific fact. A personal belief of mine is that I'm a decent and kind human being. I have no evidence to suggest otherwise, and base it off of today's standards of what makes a good person, not a fictional book written by misogynistic, racist dead men. On that note, you can join us next time where we'll be talking about the psychology behind theology. Hopefully we're starting to break down those harsh and toxic walls to allow for positive thought processes to begin and heal as a society. I am trying to make sure that I'm practicing compassion and understanding and empathy when I'm recording these videos, not trying to be viciously, personally attacking people, because I kind of did that with my ex-Mormon video. Yeah, it wasn't that great of me to do that, but I'm learning, and I hope that you guys learned a little bit today. But that is all for today's video. I really hope you enjoyed this series so far, and if you did like this video, please let me know down in the comment section below. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, etc. Also let me know. I'd love to actually have a decent discussion that doesn't end up in frustration and argument. You can check out my other videos by clicking over here. You can subscribe by clicking down here. And that's basically it. So yeah, let me know what you think.
And don't forget to question everything.